Today is a very special episode. It's about one of the biggest bands that's ever existed, really.
In time.
Ever. In the history of the universe. Even on Mars, they know this band.
Oh.
Even on Venus, they love this band.
Yep.
This is a band that really defined everything that the 90s was as far as rock music and alternative music.
Yeah, hugest band for the 90s for sure.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
We actually just put out a cover of one of their songs, which is really kind of what got us thinking about doing this and just thinking about this band, their legacy, and just everything that's come because of this band.
Yeah.
And if you haven't figured out what this topic is yet, it's Nirvana. So we're going to be talking all about Nirvana. We're going to be talking about how they formed, how they got to success, how things happened after the success, which doesn't happen so great necessarily.
Right.
And really their impact, their legacy, everything Nirvana. So strap in. Let's go along for the ride.
Let's do it.
So first of all, if you're wondering why you should listen to us talk
Why?
about music, so we are musicians.
We are.
We are in a band. We
are.
play in New York City and, all over the place as much as we can. We've been playing and listening to music for many, many years. We like to think that we know a little bit about music.
Just a little.
So we love talking about our favorite artists. We've done lots of research into them just for our own lives. So it's fun to do this and just kind of like break down everything about these artists and people that we love so much and kind of just like spread their stories and all that good stuff. So thanks for being here. Let's get right into it.
Woohoo! Welcome to Nirvana. Not a long run, but definitely a big stamp on music.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I guess we should start with a man named Kurt Cobain.
beginning.
Kurt Donald Cobain. Kurt Cobain, born February 20th, 1967. So it all starts with him when we're talking about Nirvana. And it kind of ends with him too, but we'll get to that later, unfortunately. Kurt was born in Aberdeen, right? Aberdeen, Washington.
Yes, he
A
was.
suburb of Seattle. Everything I've heard about Aberdeen is that it's a very depressed place.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That was deep. Whoa.
I was
that
going to say the climate has to do a lot with, the atmosphere too. And then it's a very industrial type of place, So a lot of wake up, go to work, leave work, go home.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
definitely.
yeah.
And, at the time, they were saying there was a lot of, like, jobs being lost, like, it was like a depressed, timber town. Like, it was based on, like, logging and, like,
Yeah.
cutting down trees and stuff.
Correct.
And around the time that Kurt was coming up, that all of his friends were coming up, that all this stuff we're going to be talking about, like, they were losing jobs, like, mills were shutting down, so it's already kind of depressed in that way. And then
Damn
also
robots.
it's raining all the time.
Yes.
So it's just not a super happy place to be. But by all intents and purposes, from all the stories we've heard, Kurt was a pretty happy child. He was always interested in art and music from a young age. I mean, I think one time I heard a story, he wrote a song when he was 4 years old about going to the park.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He was
Yeah.
always interested in drawing and things like that. And until his parents got divorced, he stayed like a pretty happy kid, is what it seems like.
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
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 But his parents did get divorced when he was 9 years old, and it really affected him. And he was never really that happy child ever again.
No. Yeah. Parents, stick together. No, I'm just kidding.
So after his parents got divorced, he really started like becoming very withdrawn and started kind of like, acting out a little bit,
Yeah.
being kind of a troublemaker. I know he was like graffitiing, like spray painting shit all over.
Yeah. Yeah.
Apparently, even back then, this was really crazy. I heard like one of his friends in high school was saying he would just like walk around with like shirts that he like put like he like would
His
spray
own.
paint things
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
And he would put shit on his shirts like "I want to die."
Yeah.
Like life sucks, blah 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 blah, and all of his friends are like, "Dude, are you okay?"
Yeah. But he was not, and he channeled that into more art, which is cool.
Yes.
Yeah. I feel like around that time, that is when people were drawing stuff on their own clothes, patches, and all those things like that. So he was right with the trend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a very like punk rock thing to do, and he was clearly very much into punk rock. He started playing guitar. I think I heard he got like a few lessons from some guy for like a few months, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
Just enough for him to like understand like the technique of like playing a guitar.
Yeah.
And then he just kind of took everything and ran for it after that.
Yeah, a real artist approach. Like, let me make the music on this thing, which is cool.
Yeah, 100%. So when he first started playing guitar, he was obviously very influenced by punk. And I actually I have some notes, guys. I didn't think I was going to need notes because I know so much about this band, but there are some like small things that I want to point out that I might have forgotten if I didn't have my notes. So he was introduced to a guy named Buzz Osborne from a band called the Melvins.
Yeah.
And this was really like the way that he really got into like the punk rock scene.
Yeah, that band was huge at that time.
Yeah, it was a really big band in the area, and he became friends with them, and he started going to their shows and kind of just being like ingrained in the punk scene in that area at the time, right? So he knew that he wanted to play music, but I don't think he saw the exact vision yet. I mean, he started bands. I mean, well, first of all, he dropped out of high school like 2 weeks before graduating because he realized he wouldn't have enough credits, and then he was like homeless, living under a bridge for a while. Yeah, because his mom was like, "You need to get a job or get the fuck out." Yeah, basically. Yeah. And so he was very depressed. Like he was kind of a lethargic at the time. He didn't really want to do a lot of stuff. So he
just hanging around. Yeah, hanging around the music scene.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, the punk scene kind of offered him escape from like everything that he was going through.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, all that angst, all that aggression, all that anger at the world. I mean, perfect person for it, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So he started a band. We talked about this in the podcast we did where we were talking about Nirvana and Alice in Chains. So we started a band called Fecal Matter.
Yep.
Which is such a pleasant, lovely name. But it is really funny, though, because that's exactly the kind of name that you would have in this era, if you were a punk band. You just want to have the grossest, like, most crass, like, most disgusting thing that you could possibly do.
Oh, yeah.
So he comes up with Fecal Matter, which is great. That didn't last super long, but he ended up forming another band with somebody else soon. So, okay, side note. If you know about Nirvana, you know that the bass player, his name is Chris Novoselic.
Yeah.
What a lot of people might not know is that Kurt was not friends with Chris first.
No. Chris was older.
Chris was a few years older than him.
Yeah.
Kurt became friends with Chris' brother, Robert Novoselic, first.
Yeah.
And apparently Kurt would be over there hanging out with him, and then he would hear like loud punk rock music coming from upstairs. He was like, "Oh, what's that?" He's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's just my brother." Blah, 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 blah. So Kurt knew that he was into punk rock just from being around his house. And again, you know, at this time, like, right now, like this day and age, punk rock, everyone knows what punk rock is. It's a big thing. It's been around forever. But back then, like, if you were like a punk rocker, like, that was like a very underground, like, that was very much a subculture.
It's so true. Yeah. Like, you walked around as a punk rocker. I mean, you were definitely alienated. You were definitely part of like a subculture, and like, you weren't like a mainstream person at all with a job or anything functioning. So that's really interesting. Chris didn't really care that Kurt was into music.
No, not at all. Not at first.
Not that lame ass little kid. You know when you're just like 1 year older or 2 years older than somebody.
Oh, this little freshman is trying to be in a band with me. I'm a sophomore, dude. I don't associate myself
not at all
with the likes of you. So it's funny. So Kurt gave him a demo tape.
Yeah.
Of Fecal Matter. Which is a great sentence to say. Try saying that with a straight face. Yeah, so I got this Fecal Matter demo tape, and I really liked it, guys. No, but he gave Chris the demo tape for Fecal Matter, and he straight up didn't listen to it for, like, months. Right. It was just sitting in his room. Yeah. And eventually he decided to listen to it. And he was like, hey, this actually isn't too bad. Maybe I will start a band with this little Kurt kid. And then also I want to shout this out because this is funny. Chris is a giant person. Yes. He's like 6'7". Kurt is like 5'7". So the two of them together as a duo, they must have looked like such an odd couple. Exactly. You know what I mean? Which is just really funny to me. So yeah, so they started a band, and I had to write this down. So, okay, guys. The other band after Fecal Matter, they originally started, it was called The Sellouts. Right. It was Kurt on drums. Chris on lead. Chris on guitar and vocals. Yeah. And then, what was it? Steve Newman. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, Steve Newman. Your name isn't Shane. I take it back.
Hello, Newman.
Hello, Shane. So he was on bass. So I wrote this down because I thought this was really funny in this article I was reading. So the way that this band ended is that Steve attacked Kurt with a vacuum cleaner, bringing the band to a sucky end. Oh, man. That was the quote in this article I read. I'm like, that's so corny, but it's also kind of funny.
It's hilarious. It sounds like somebody really young wrote that article.
Probably. So that band didn't last so far, but they weren't determined. They were determined to keep going, Chris and Kurt. Definitely. So they started a new band and eventually settled on the name Nirvana. And I have another quote here from Kurt. He said, because first of all, it's interesting. Like, you'll see why I say this when I'm about to read this quote. Nirvana is a way nicer sounding name than Fecal Matter.
Yes, and Sellouts.
Yeah, it's a way prettier. It's not really what you would expect it to be. Like, if you're listening to this story, and you're hearing the other things that they were doing, you wouldn't really expect him to come up with a name like that for the band.
No, I if I had to like go into his brain, I would say that, you know, all of that going through like the first band, getting Chris, going through the second band, having it end, and then finally trying to get into another level of where you're getting to. I feel like he wanted some type of, or accepted some type of peace within himself, because he kind of found himself.
Yeah.
You know, and I could see why he wanted something airy and pretty and nice.
Well, that's the thing. It's funny. So this is what the quote is. So he said this. Kurt said, "I wanted a name that was kind of beautiful or nice and pretty instead of a mean, raunchy punk name like the Angry Samoans."
The Angry Samoans.
You know them. They're
Exactly.
Samoan and they're angry. Everyone knows them.
To cook for me.
Everyone knows an angry Samoan, right? So then after this, it was definitely Kurt and Chris at this point. They knew that we're in this together. We're doing this. We're both misfits. We both get along. We're at the same thing. We get bullied by the same people or whatever. But they really had a hard time finding a drummer.
Yes.
So the original drummer for their first album, which we'll talk about in a sec, his name was Chad Channing.
Yes, Chad Channing.
Yeah. So shout out. That's a cool. That sounds like a stage name, doesn't it?
It really does.
Also, I wanted to shout out Chris was born in Compton, California, to Croatian immigrants.
West Side.
So shout out to Chris, starting in Compton and making it all the way up to Aberdeen, which must have been kind of a shock. I don't know how old he was when they moved, but
Yeah.
I guess they got priced out of LA.
Yeah. Culture shock for real.
So after playing with Chad, doing some tours, playing around, getting involved with the scene, they were signed to the like local indie label at
Yeah.
the time for this scene, which was called Sub Pop Records.
Right.
So shout out to Sub Pop Records. They signed a bunch of people from Seattle, from around this area around this time, and they were big in breaking a lot of acts, including Nirvana, obviously. So the first album they put out was called Bleach.
Yeah.
Right?
Debut.
And it's really crazy when you listen to this album, because you can start to hear all the things in this that made Nirvana what it was.
Right.
Because it's not just a punk album.
No.
It's not just a metal album.
Yeah, it's definitely loud. It's definitely raucous. And you are hearing like fundamentals of Nirvana's like honed in sound.
Yes.
Yeah, in Bleach.
Yes. And not only that, but you're starting to hear a little bit of the melody writing that he's doing as well. Because when you think of punk music and you think of metal music, you don't necessarily think of melody. But Kurt was hugely inspired by
John Lennon.
Yes, I was going to say the Beatles, but specifically John Lennon. He was a huge John Lennon fan, and obviously the Beatles write pop songs. So he listens to a lot of Beatles, and eventually that kind of it sinks in your head a little bit. You can only listen to so much without it affecting your music a little bit.
Correct.
You know what I mean? So that was just a really interesting thing, and it's a really interesting time period in music, because the mainstream of right now I think they put out Bleach in 89.
Yeah, getting to the late 80s, almost making the cusp of the 90s.
Yeah, so you think about what's popular in 89, you're like Bon Jovi, Motley Crue, like
Michael
Guns
Jackson.
N' Roses, Michael Jackson. This huge, super produced, super polished music.
Yeah, arena music.
Right?
Yeah.
And then this is the complete opposite of this. Like, I want to shout out a song from this album, Negative Creep. I really like this. It's like it shouldn't be as good as it is.
Right.
It's like, it's metal, but it's punk at the same time, but it's not slow, but it's not fast. It's just like, I don't even understand how you make a song like this.
Yeah. They, when they get into themselves more, they have a nice groove. Nirvana sets a nice groove to them that kind of sets them apart from other, like, punk, grunge, metal artists.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's really interesting hearing this album, hearing all the pieces that make Nirvana what they would really become.
Yeah.
But, like, you think about it, it's just crazy. Like, this is just nobody ever expected any of these people to do anything. I mean, this is just this is not a big city. This is just a small town with a few punk rockers playing. They all know each other. They're all in like this little scene together. I don't think anybody was really expecting them to be, anyone from this scene to be a huge personality or mainstream or whatever.
Right.
They're just doing the music that they want to do.
Yeah. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if we as the people, if we change the decade, or if it's programming, or if it's a little bit of both. Like the music industry sets music for a certain decade and they want things to change. Like if you want to think of 1980 to 1988, 1989, it's a big shift in music sound. You're coming out of disco, coming out of hard rock. So it's like, I don't know if we do it as the masses or if the recording industry does it or if we do it together, but something was shifting towards the late 80s into the 90s.
I think it's a little bit of both, but we'll talk about it more after they drop their second album, which, we're starting to get towards that. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the second album. Never mind. So after they put out the first album, so critics really liked it. Because again, they are starting to see like, oh, well, this is really interesting. This is like, it's like a hybrid punk and metal, but it's also with pop melodies.
Yeah.
It doesn't, like, on paper, it shouldn't work. It doesn't really make sense. But this is just the music that Kurt had inside of him. And again, it's not like he's even like a crazy technical musician. It's just like he has his instrument, he has his ideas, and he knows how to create.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's not the greatest guitar player that's ever lived. He's not the most fantastic singer that's ever lived. But he knows what he wants to do, and he can make it happen.
Yeah. It's a great combination of the happy and the sad.
Yes, exactly. So after they put out that first album, Bleach, again, so it does well with critics. It's not like a huge seller. It's, it's not a little indie label in the Northwest. Like, nobody expected to do anything crazy, but Nirvana keeps going. They keep touring.
Yes.
They did multiple tours of the United States during this time.
And that's what got their name out. That's the best way to do it. So they did it.
Yeah, they did it. And they, I hear people that were friends with them saying, like, yeah, they would go do the first tour, there would be nobody there. Second tour, there'd be 5 people. Second tour after that, or I guess that would be third. Third would be the way to say that. Then there would be 20 people. The 5th tour, there'd be 50 people. Then the next tour, there'd be 200 people. And then they're starting to work on another album.
Yeah.
Because first of all, they got a new drummer.
Yes, the drummer keeps revolving. It's a
literally
revolving door.
It's literally like that joke from Spinal Tap.
Yes.
Where they have a new drummer every time they do anything. So I don't know what happened with Chad. I mean, I thought he was pretty good on Bleach. He's not as good as the guy that's going to replace him.
No.
But I thought he was pretty good. But I don't know. Maybe they had some personal issues or whatever.
Hold on one second. I think Chad said he was too drunk to show up for... well,
that's not going to keep you in the band.
For rehearsal one day. He was too hungover.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Way to blow it, guy.
Yeah, Chad was too hungover to go to rehearsal one day, so he didn't go, and then that was it.
No call, no show?
He told them. He literally told them he was too hungover. Yeah.
Got to take it more serious, man.
Yeah, because right then because it was kind of rocky with Chad, and then another drummer came in. They met another drummer as it was getting like to the end of the rope with Chad.
So the other drummer that they met was a guy from DC, actually. So which I also think is really interesting because that's so far removed from Seattle.
But they're both Washington.
You're right. There's a portal, actually. But no, I think it's really interesting because because Dave Grohl is the drummer that we're speaking of. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. So he was actually introduced to Kurt by Buzz Osborne. Because Dave was in a band called Scream at the time, but he was like a hardcore DC punk guy.
Yeah.
And DC has a great hardcore scene.
Oh, yeah.
So it's really interesting to me how these guys develop their sound and their style like thousands of miles away from each other. But then when the universe brings them together, they were instantly like, oh, this is our guy. And it's funny because I saw something with Dave where he was like, he met them and was like, this is Nirvana? This giant lumberjack looking dude and this tiny guy that he's friends with? I saw them on the album cover for Bleach. I thought they were just like some crazy like psycho lumberjack people. It's like, this is not what I was expecting at all. But obviously, he's a great drummer, and apparently he fit in with them pretty well personality-wise.
Yeah.
So apparently, once they met Dave, they knew that was the guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's always cool to see. So they're still touring. They're getting bigger, and they got signed to another label.
Yeah, DCG.
Geffen Records.
Yeah, part of the Universal Music Group. Major label signing time.
Yes. Yes. And I think it's funny, like thinking about it now. That was probably a pretty big gamble to sign a band like this to a major label. For
Geffen, yeah, because Geffen he had Guns N' Roses signed, and they were huge, and a lot of people are under Geffen. I remember watching videos in the early 90s and stuff, and almost every like rock band was under Geffen Records.
Signed by David Geffen at Geffen Records. Yeah, so he was just like going for it. So I read, it was funny, apparently the best projections for Nirvana was where they would sell like 250,000 worldwide. Not even just on that first album, just like in general. Like maybe we'll make a little bit of money off this band, whatever. So they're working on their second album, and it ends up being called Nevermind. This, they had a producer that was a lot more known for like producing, you know, better, more high quality acts, I guess. And he had a good ear for sound, just like Kurt was really developing his ear for melody at the time. And this producer, what's his name? Butch Vig, I think.
Yeah.
Yes. So shout out to Butch. I almost forgot your name, but I wasn't looking at my notes, but I got you. So he really helped to make this sound very polished.
Yeah.
Which isn't even really something that Kurt wanted. Because Kurt was, again, a super underground guy. Like, he was not trying to be a big famous rock star. There was at no point where he's like, if I make this music, maybe I'll be famous.
Yeah.
Like, that was just, that was inside of him.
Right.
You know what I mean? You can't fake that shit.
Yeah, no. And, like, Kurt also didn't really like the sound of his own voice, too. Quite like John Lennon, which is very interesting.
It's funny that you bring that up, because one of the stories from the recording of this album is, so I don't know, so if you guys are, you know, into recording, you would know a big technique for making vocals sound bigger and better is to double track it.
Yes.
Right? So you do one take of the same thing, then you do another take of the exact same thing, but you play them both at the same time. So it makes everything look huge. Or sound huge, sorry. Maybe look if you're visualizing it. But Kurt did not want to do that. He thought it was very like anti-punk. He thought it was just everything against what he was doing. So basically what really, he's just like, I don't want to do that at all.
I know, and they had to convince him.
And the way that they convinced him is that Butch was like, well, you know, John Lennon did it. And he was like, oh, really?
Yes.
Well, I love John Lennon. I mean, if John Lennon did it, then who am I to not do it if John Lennon did it? You know what I mean?
John Lennon didn't only double it. He did it 3 times. And, like, Kurt started doing it 3 times, too.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, especially as recording technology gets bigger and better. Like, you could do as many takes of anything as you want. You know what I mean? So that's how he convinced Kurt to do it. And this album, Nevermind, obviously becomes absolutely huge. So it's funny. So they were expected to sell maybe 250,000 copies tops worldwide. As of now, that album has sold over 30 million worldwide. That's a crazy number. And so again,
more than Diamond.
And it's like 3 times Diamond. Like it's an insane number.
Oh, that's my new band's name. 3 times
Diamond. That's pretty good. I like that. There's a bar right here called 3 Diamond Door.
Oh.
Wow, we're on the wave. What was I saying? Yeah, so it's just really crazy because, again, we all know people like this. We all know sensitive, quiet, like, artist types that just want to be alone. They just want to make their weird music or their weird art, whatever. Just let me do what I want to do.
Yep.
This man never should have become as famous as he was.
No.
There's just nobody would ever expect it, and there was just no reason for it. And, like, you think about it, it's like, this is just an indie band from a small town just playing punk rock music, and then next thing you know, literally one album goes, and now they're like mega superstars.
Huge. I mean, just the video alone for Smells Like Teen Spirit, the breakout single for that album, just the video alone was something that nobody had ever seen before. I remember watching that video and having like adults come in and be like, what the hell is this? All those kids are high. Like,
what else is new?
It was so shocking, but it was so like inviting and welcoming, and I think that's what part of the sensation of it was. Like, we were all fascinated. People, everybody that hears them, whenever you hear them or whenever you see that video, you're just like interested and you need to know more. Right.
And that's the thing that's really interesting about it. Like, you're talking about, there's no reason that it should be inviting. Like, and especially you're talking about the video, it's just like they're playing in like in the middle of a high school gym. Everyone's just like punching each other, just jumping off the walls. There's nothing welcoming necessarily about this video.
No. But you do stare in, because if you've gone to pep rallies or homecoming or whatever, the band that's playing for pep rally does not look like that.
Nope.
Those kids are not going to play for us. And the cheerleaders don't look like that with tattoos and like they look like really grunged out.
Like, and the people that would be at the auditorium that would actually go to the pep rally are not these punk kids.
No.
These punk kids are not going to this damn pep rally.
No, they're outside smoking the cigarettes.
They're smoking cigarettes in the skipping class or whatever. But I think that's a really interesting microcosm of like Nirvana as a whole, because it's like, when you listen to the music, on paper it shouldn't really be that inviting. It's this super heavy, super like noise rock music. Yeah. But there's these melodies over top of it that are so catchy, and then there's this clearly, like, Kurt is putting his whole soul into these songs, and it's like he's basically inviting you to listen to him as a person.
Yes.
You know what I mean? More so than other bands, because he's writing the songs all by himself, and he's writing most of the music by himself too.
Yeah.
So like when you hear Nirvana, it's a lot more of like, oh, this is from this person specifically, than like if you hear, you know, like a Zeppelin or something, where all four of the people are coming together to like write the songs and make the music sometimes.
Right.
And obviously all the people in the band have a part in making it sound how it does. But as far as like the actual song itself, and the song is the currency of music. If you don't have songs, you don't have anything. That's all from Kurt.
Yeah, and it's a very honest band, because listening to Nirvana, I don't feel like I'm hearing from Dave's soul or spirit. I'm hearing him play, and Chris just has that type of vibe where it's like he's not saying anything to you. He's just playing, like, you know. So I do feel like the poeticism, the sensitivity, like it's all Kurt. Like he was such an honest person without having even to say anything, even to explain himself. He was an honest person just by looking at him, hearing him sing. And
that's another thing. It's like he's even like, you know, when you talk about like their shows, like he's not this guy that's like jumping all over the stage and like doing all kinds of crazy like showmanship. Like he's just up there just playing his songs, and you just can't look away from him because you know it's all real. Yeah. You know? And yeah, so it's just really crazy. And it's like, it's really sad because it's like when you talk about it, it's like as soon as they got big, it feels like the beginning of the end. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because they were doing all these tours, they were all in the punk scene for so long, getting to that point, and then as soon as they get big, it's like things start going downhill real fast.
Yeah, a lot of things that they weren't used to, like a lot of people that they didn't even really like started to like them. So, you know, Kurt would say like, oh, the same people that used to beat me up in high school are now listening to my music. Right. And musicians that I didn't really care for want to hang out with me now, and it's like I don't even really like them. So a lot of that had to annoy him, and we're talking about somebody like who just used to dress from the Salvation Army, basically. You know what I'm saying? He's not even trying to style and fashion on you. He was never a superstar. Yeah, when he puts on a green knitted sweater, I believe it's because he was cold and he just picked that sweater and put it on. He didn't even want to make a statement, really.
Yeah, it is what it is. It's like, I can't afford anything else. I'm just going to put it on and go play some music, and that's what it is. And it's just so crazy because it's like that, his look became like the look. The look. And it's like, again, he's just trying to live his life. Right. Like, he didn't want any of this to happen. Everybody, and nobody expected it.
Yeah, everybody in school had that look. All of a sudden, everybody had on a t-shirt with a long sleeve underneath it and freaking jeans with, like, rips in it and stuff. Yes. Insane.
So, yeah, so there's a lot of things going on with him now. So, first of all, I should mention, so he started to get into drugs a little before this. Specifically, heroin was the thing that really got him. And, you know, there's obviously emotional reasons, but also he had, like, chronic stomach issues that nobody ever was able to diagnose while he was alive. Like, I heard stories where, like, he would be at the dinner table, like, crying because his stomach, like, hurt so bad. You know what I mean? And that's, like, terrible. Like, you have to eat every day. Yeah. So your stomach is constantly in pain. It's like, I could easily see him using the heroin as a way to just escape the pain. No doctor knew what it was. For sure. Nobody could say what it was.
I blame the government. Somebody put a chip in him right and had it retching at his bowels.
Yeah. So obviously that's not going to help your mental state either. No. And all that's happening, now all of a sudden, you're a huge megastar celebrity. Everybody's catering to you. Everybody's trying to kiss your ass. Everybody wants something from you. Right. And you're just trying to make the same music that you've been trying to make this entire time when you were broke, when nobody gave a shit about you, when you were homeless living under a bridge. Like, nothing about you changed. But now everything around you is different.
Yeah, that's crazy. I want to talk a lot about his artistry, about Kurt's artistry, because the songs that he chose to cover were really interesting songs as well. Right. Normally people will choose like really mainstream songs that we all kind of know, and like a Beatles song or something like that, and he chose to cover like David Bowie, The Man Who Sold the World. We passed upon the stairs. And also the Meat Puppets, you know, people that I didn't know about until I knew about Nirvana. So I thought that was a great thing. I thought his choice in song covers were also part of like his artistry, like the very sensitive songs, like, you know, thought-provoking songs and stuff, not just like pop and dancing around or you know, making sounds.
Absolutely. And again, because I don't think he was ever trying to prove anything to anyone. I think all he ever wanted to do was prove to himself that he could express himself in the way that he wanted to. That's how it always felt for me anyway. But yeah, so like I said, so as soon as they get successful, it's really the beginning of the end. Oh, I do want to shout out a few songs on this album though.
Yeah.
Because let's talk about the album and then we'll move forward.
Yeah.
The album is clearly amazing. I mean, it's very well produced, which again, Kurt wasn't even super excited about that, but it is how it is. All these songs are amazing. It's like literally you listen to this album, like every single track is a banger. Like the big ones, the Smells Like Teen Spirit, Come As You Are, In Bloom.
I loved In Bloom. I loved the video for In Bloom. That was like the best thing because they were dressed like Beatles or Beach Boys in like suits, and they were purposely playing like really, really stiff. And then after the video like breaks up, they start breaking everything on set and stuff.
Yeah,
I think it was a great homage to all the other rock bands that came before them, and then it was also showcasing them as well. That's my favorite video to watch. My favorite song is Drain You. One baby, two, another says. I love that
that's
one.
That's a great one. I was gonna say, so I want to shout out some songs that aren't like the singles that we still love. Like Drain You is a great one.
Yeah.
One of my favorites, I think, is Breed.
Yeah.
But it's just so aggressive.
Yeah.
It's, like you can't sit down.
She
with
said.
it. Like yeah, it's just amazing.
Oh yeah.
But like Something in the Way.
Yeah, that's
an amazing
awesome.
song, completely different than all the other songs.
That's a really good song.
Every single song on this album is a banger. There is no filler on this album.
No.
You know what I mean? And again, nobody expected it to do well. Millions and millions of copies. They put it out. Smells Like Teen Spirit becomes the biggest song. And like the whole generation feels like they understand Kurt and that they feel what he's saying.
Yeah.
And the thing that's also really crazy, this is one last tangent before we go on. I feel like a lot of times with like music and bands, it's easy for something to be like, once time goes on, like, oh, this is your dad's music. Like, I'm a kid, I'm not going to listen to this. This is like the old generation's music. But with Nirvana, it's like, I don't think that ever happened. I think ever since Nirvana came out, every generation of kids has loved this band.
Yeah. It's something about, there are just certain years of music that are really great. We've covered a lot of years of music on our podcast and stuff. 94 is a really great year for music. And Smells Like Teen Spirit came out around then.
No, 91.
91, I'm so sorry.
94 was, yeah.
94 was the last part.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me say that over again.
Take two.
All right, yeah. So, yeah, there's certain years that were just really, really great for music. And, like, just like you're saying, okay, like when Zeppelin came out, Zeppelin still to this day is not your dad's music.
Right.
It's everybody's music going forward,
right.
you know? And I feel like Nirvana hits that mark too, and a lot of it has to do with the years a lot of people come out. So I don't know. Once again, I don't know if it's our connection to the year, if it's just the vibes on the planet, and everybody just shifts that way, or if it's just a little bit of both.
I think it's a little bit of both. The way that I imagine it, so I think definitely people were getting sick of the 80s style. It had been around for a while at that point. But again, I don't think they were expecting Nirvana and this sound to be that great. I think they put it out and the people found it and it exploded, and then once that happened they're like, oh well, we got to capitalize on this.
Yeah,
because of course if you're a business person you're gonna be like, oh, there's money in this, let's throw everything at it now, let's sign every single band from Seattle we possibly can, let's put out every single band that has anything to do with Nirvana or kind of looks like Nirvana or sounds anything like them, and then that's the sound that we're gonna push now. But I think the original spark came from the people. Yeah. Some type of shift of, like, I don't know, youth culture taking over like
again.
Some collective consciousness.
Yeah.
Huh, this is funny. Okay, I'm not going to show the camera because I wrote it too small, but I just wrote, all caps, too big, too fast. Because it is what it is.
Yeah.
So, and then Kurt got married February 24th, 1992. Oh, that was right after his birthday. To Courtney Love, who is a very divisive figure in the history of Nirvana. I mean, he clearly loved her.
Yeah.
They weren't necessarily probably the best for each other.
Yeah,
they were both doing drugs and shit.
Right, I don't think they were compatible, but I think they were just on the scene, and she was a front person, an aggressive front person who also wanted to be famous.
Yes,
she
definitely.
from the beginning. And I just want to say, I love Hole.
Yeah.
I like that band a lot.
Yeah. I'm not hating on them.
Yeah, not at all. But yeah, they weren't very compatible, but there was a little bit of yin and yang with them. She
Yeah.
was more the aggressor, and she could almost like double as his manager
Yes.
at times, and she
Which
was very much like that.
I think he probably needed that a little
Yeah.
bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to somebody to keep him in track a little bit, or
Yeah.
someone to kind of protect him. Because also they were saying, like, now he's big, now there's all these people, he has, like, all these handlers that are just, like, you know, enabling him for, like, anything that he wants to do or needs to do or
Correct.
whatever. So it's good to have somebody to be like, hey, like, ground you a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're working on the next album, which they purposely wanted to be completely different
Yeah.
than Nevermind.
Yeah, they didn't want it to feel mainstream.
Yeah, which first of all, I think that right there is also the hallmark of a great artist, to see whatever you did last and be like, okay, how can I do not this?
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm not satisfied with just doing the same thing. We've already done that. We have to keep progressing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't feel any like gloom when this album was coming out, but I did feel a weird turn. I don't know. Once Kurt dyed his hair pink, I felt weird. Like a lot of people do that, and it shouldn't have been a big deal or anything like that, but I did feel kind of like a shift, kind of like a downturn. Like it didn't seem like everything was as fun as it was.
Yeah. Yeah, and, you know, clearly it wasn't at this point. Again, this is not a guy that should be in the spotlight. This is the guy that wants to hide from everybody, and it just so happens that music is the way that he expresses himself and gets better and feels better.
Yeah.
And then it's really kind of tragic. It's almost like he was put in, like, a prison of his own making, because all he's doing is trying to express himself. And then all of a sudden, by doing that, he's just put on this huge pedestal. Everybody's trying to be like him and shit, and he never wanted any of this. He must have
Yeah.
felt kind of trapped, no?
Yeah, I would say he felt trapped. And it's not like today. Like, you have big artists now today who dismantle their social media, say that they're not coming out, they're not putting out an album, they don't feel like doing this. But the machine was a lot more bigger and in control back then. So it's like Kurt wasn't even... He didn't even own himself at that point.
Right.
So it's like, even if he wanted to take a break, you can't, because the machine owns you. You're part of a big major record label, and you don't
Right.
have your own individualism, kind of like we have today. So I can
That's
see
true.
how that could be very maddening.
Yeah, I could definitely understand why he just felt kind of trapped in the situation. So I feel like when going into creating In Utero, which was the next album, I feel like he was like, what can I just do differently? Like, I don't want it to be like how the music that we've come out with before. And I feel like listening to that album, he purposely made it like I almost said grungier. I didn't even mean to say that, because that's what they call this music, grunge music, but whatever. It's hard to label music. I think it's stupid. But anyway, like, this album is clearly dirtier. It's not as poppy. It's a lot more noise rock. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he doubled down on it. Like, if this album came out by itself and Nevermind didn't come out before it, this album is not mainstream at all.
No.
There is nothing mainstream about this album.
No, not
You
the
know what I mean?
production, nothing. Yeah.
Not the songwriting. It's actually really crazy. Because,
Yeah.
again, it's him trying to basically go against everything that's happening in his life right now.
Yeah.
And you listen to this album, like, it's a great punk rock album. It's a great noise rock album. But if you're not already a super huge band, that is not the album that's going to break you.
Right. Correct.
Nevermind was super polished, super poppy. It just happened to be like punk metal, like underground stuff. But the pop and the melody of it was very produced, very well polished. This was a dirty album.
Yeah, and poor Kurt, he was just seeing how he could turn people off.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, he didn't want that many fans. I mean, and that's understandable. So he would make songs that, you know, were very abrasive, like "Rape Me." That was hugely controversial.
Rape me.
But around that time, people were going to Congress to try to get expletive style records put in record stores without there being much of a problem. So he was kind of along the wave, you know, like Twisted Sister, Frank Zappa going to Congress,
Yep.
and getting those stickers on their albums. But yeah, I actually think that's a really cool song, though. "Rape Me." Like, I just like the way he sings it, especially when he goes like, "Do it again." Like,
Yeah.
his melodies are really, really good. But yeah, just trying to turn people off. But I mean, everybody already loved him by then. Like, you would have to do something so bad to turn people off, and nobody was getting turned off by him.
No. So, again, I really understand how he feels trapped at this point. And he's just going on. He's kind of going through the motions. His heroin addiction is getting worse. They go on a tour of Europe in winter 93, 94. I think the album came out in 93. So they're doing, like, the promotion tour.
It did.
Yeah.
I had a flashback. I was like, I'm like in school right now, like in junior high.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So they did a tour of Europe in 93/94, which eventually would be their last tour. So I took some notes about exactly how this went down, because the last couple months of his life, like, I feel like there's a lot building up, and I feel like I always hear like different stories about it. But basically, so he OD'd on prescription drugs March 4th, 1994, and they sent him to I don't know if they sent him or if he decided to go to a detox program, but he went to a detox program, and he was there for a few days, and he like escaped, like he fled from the place. And next thing you know, a few days later, really, he was discovered April 7th at his house by an electrician that was coming to install a security system, and he was dead. Just on the floor, dead. That must have been a great fucking job for that electrician, I'll tell you that.
Insane. Yeah. That was really a bad time. It's really sad that somebody would take their own life because of so much stress about their public life, you know, that they couldn't have a private life. It's pretty sad. I, as a kid, remember coming home from school, and as soon as I came home from school, one of my friends called me. They're like, "Did you hear about Kurt?" And I was like, "Kurt who?" Like, I thought they were talking about somebody from school.
Yeah.
And then they were talking about Kurt Cobain. So then, of course, you know, you turn on MTV right away.
Everything.
Because they have all the news.
Yeah.
Right? So, but yeah, it was a really sad time. But in a way, I wasn't like 100% shocked, because it's like you kind of saw the downturn. And back then, musicians like to live more now. But back then, they kind of didn't, you know, from the 90s and a little before. So, you know, I just kind of expected that.
Yeah, and you know, obviously you listen to the music, and he's clearly a depressed guy. He clearly has a lot of anxiety, a lot of not happy feelings. We were talking about before, I mean, he would literally write, "I want to kill myself" on his shirts in high school. You know what I mean? So it's not like, I don't know, it's not like this was completely out of the left field.
Right.
But, you know, it is what it is, and it's obviously sad. And a lot of people have a lot of different opinions about how they think things went down. A lot of people don't think he did kill himself. A lot of people think that maybe Courtney had something to do with it. They were like, oh, he was about to get a divorce and take the assets or blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I can't speak to any of that. I'm not trying to say, like, I know what happened. I wasn't there.
Right.
All I know is that the guy died by a gunshot wound. And that was it. That's the whole story of Nirvana. Obviously, they didn't keep going on after that. How do you do that?
And no one expected them to.
No.
You know.
How could you?
Yeah. It's like, that's just what it is. But Nirvana did go on to get lots of acclaim. They got many awards. They got Grammys. They got American Music Awards. They got Brit Awards. They got tons. MTV Awards, like a whole bunch. So, I mean, they're definitely cemented in history as one of the greatest bands in rock and roll. And that's a cool thing. Yeah. But it's sad that their run was so short.
Their run was so short. And it's like, it's, you know, it's a shooting star that falls really fast. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, like when you look at the story, it's just like, it's almost hard to see a scenario where he lived that much longer.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, because like I said, it feels like talking about this, like as soon as they got big, like that's really the beginning of the end. Like if they stayed underground, I think he would have lived longer. Yeah,
definitely. And if he, like, you know, if he just stopped, you know, if he just stopped and just let the record companies sue him or whatever, because they're definitely going to come after you if you just break a contract. But if he just stopped, I think he would have been all right. But I mean, how do you stop? Like, you know.
Well, especially that's the thing. It's like the whole, like, he was making music when he was broke, living under a fucking bridge. Like, it's clearly super important to him, way before money or fame was involved. So it's like now he gets money and fame by making music, and now he has to stop doing the thing that he loves so much in the first place.
Exactly.
What is that? Like,
yeah.
So I understand how he's just sitting there in this situation. Like, how do I get out of this? Maybe at some point he thought there's only one way out of this, and it's a permanent solution.
Yeah, you know? I mean, and the heroin doesn't help.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, so that's a shame.
But, so I really, when thinking about Nirvana, like the main thing I think of, obviously I think of the music, but I really think of their influence. Because without Nirvana, it's like, who knows what music and music culture would have been like all the way through the 90s, all the way through the 2000s, really. Because I remember, like, growing up in, like, the early 2000s listening to, like, alternative rock stations, But at that point, alternative rock was rock. Like, it was the sound. So I always remember thinking, like, what is alternative? Like, this is the music. Like, I thought that alternative was like a stupid label.
Yeah.
Because it was like everything that was big. So I'm like, how is this alternative? This is like regular rock to me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I guess it was alternative at the time.
Yeah,
But
when
that
you think
sound
of-
took over so hard.
So hard, yeah.
Yeah.
When you think of the difference between Nirvana and like Motley Crue and John Bon Jovi, like
Yeah.
that Motley Crue, John Bon Jovi was the mainstream. That was hard rock. Skid Row, all those people.
Right.
Skid Row was a band name that Nirvana did use
That
at
they
one
tried,
point.
yeah. Which is funny.
Which is funny. But
I guess
yeah,
they weren't big yet, the other Skid Row.
exactly. But yeah, that was the sound, and that sound. Thank goodness for the '90s, because that carried that sound into today. There hasn't really been a change in rock music.
No.
Not a big shift. It's just very mainstream now.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, when I talk about the influence of Nirvana, like, I think Nirvana was really the biggest, the last time, like, how do I want to say this? The last most influential rock band there might ever be. You know what I mean? Because there's other styles of music, and you can always form and make your own style of music. But as far as just like a straight up rock band, the influence that they had is crazy. And when you go into the current decade, even, like, I feel like all alternative rock bands are based off what Nirvana did.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't think there's been anything new in music since the '90s.
Yeah, like, it's really insane. And like, not even just the music itself, but even like people, like the people that are into music, they still all look like Kurt Cobain. Like, we could go walk around in Brooklyn and see so many people that look exactly like how Kurt Cobain did 30 years ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't know that that's going to go away for a long time. Like,
Yeah.
he just completely shifted the idea of like what rock music meant to people and what rock music meant to an audience.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
This is not party music.
No.
This is really deep thinking, really emotional music that just connected with so many people on such a level. And like I said, I mean, it's influenced like rockers, it's influenced rappers. Like one of my favorite artists, Kid Cudi, is like obsessed with Nirvana. And it's like, you listen to the music he makes and you listen to the music that Nirvana made, and you're like, this is like the same kind of music.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and when you think about Dave Grohl and the way Foo Fighters sound, like, even like if anybody were to shift music and make it change and make it sound a little bit different, it would be Dave Grohl picking up the torch and going forward. But no,
Right.
his music sounds very, very mainstream. Doesn't even sound alternative at all.
Right. It just sounds like music. It sounds like rock. That's what I'm saying. It's like, what is alternative rock when everything is alternative? Is there alternative if everything is alternative?
Not anymore.
I don't know. You know?
The world may never know.
The world may never know. But yeah, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, when I think of Nirvana, it's just the influence, the amazing songs, and just the huge influence that they've had on every mainstream musician. I mean, I don't want to say every musician, because there's a lot of people in the world, but like, as far as like Western like music and culture, it's hard to beat someone that hasn't been influenced by him at some point. I mean, his influence might be one of the largest of any singular rock musician.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I agree.
So, shout out to Nirvana, shout out to Kurt, shout out to his memory, shout out to all of you for being here. We really appreciate it. If you guys like the podcast, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button and the little bell so you get our notifications. Leave a comment, it helps us out a lot. Check out the cover we just put out of Come As You Are. We think we put a cool little twist on it.
And we hope you guys like it.
And we hope you guys like it. But until next time, thanks for being here. We're Side After Dark.
We are.
And we'll see you soon. Thanks for being Music Maniacs.